Okay, with Christine Giles, Therapy Ties is the short film played at the Female Feedback Film Festival. It's 30 minutes long. You're from Georgia, correct?
I am from Georgia. Yes, I'm really from it's Lilburn, Georgia, which is like 10 minutes outside of Atlanta.
Well, they're like from where I sit in the last couple of years, but there's been so many films from Georgia. 10 years ago, I don't remember ever seeing a film from Georgia. Now it's like almost like 20% of the films from the United States come from Georgia.
All right, so Georgia's on the map. We are the Hollywood of the South.
Yeah, Hollywood. So that's is that do you work in the industry or at all? But I'm sure you see some of it, I guess.
Yeah, so actually I am working in the industry as a hobby, hopefully turning career. I'm a speech language pathologist, and so my whole idea and aspiration of writing has come from running a private practice. And so I run a speech and occupational therapy practice for children with autism. And so I just become intrigued by the stories and like, okay, I live these stories. I'm involved in these stories every day. Why not make these people come to life? And so that's what I've decided to do.
Gotcha. And this is your first film, correct?
This is the first film that I have ever filmed. Yes, I've written lots of stuff, but this was the one that I felt the most compelled to actually put the pedal behind the metal and get it actually filmed and casted and all that kind of stuff. Yes, sir.
But you're in the film as well, right?
Yes, I am. I am the writer, director, producer, and I ended up being the lead actress because the actress decided like 2 days before we started that she had something other else to do. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And I was like frantic, and I asked the director of photography, what am I going to do? He said, well, you wrote her. I'm sure she's somewhere inside of you. Pull her out and you be Wanda. So that's what I ended up doing.
And you never acted before?
Never, no, never acted anywhere. I've tried out for things, but I've never gotten a job. All I've done was background extras. But inside of me, I believe that there was a burning desire in order to actually put my face behind a camera. And so this gave me that. This gave me that opportunity because if I didn't do it, who else was going to do it? So I was able to actually begin to see what was inside of me and be able to unleash myself not only as a writer and a director, but also as an actress, being able to direct and do the improv and everything that would help to bring the whole show together.
So this is a very much so. This is a film about therapy, I guess, right? Like kind of resolving your trauma, almost like
Yeah.
PTSD.
Yes, yes. So a little bit about the show. The woman, the main character, her name is Wanda, and Wanda was raised in foster care. And during foster care, her mother left her when she was like 4 years old. So she went from home to home. And a lot of times they put her into therapy, they put her into group homes, they put her into all these different interventions, but they were not the best ones. They were state supported, government ran, and just did not have the most people who were involved with her own interests. So as she grew up, she ended up having to deal with a lot of her issues herself and trying to navigate foster care and group homes and being thrown out of school and being labeled as emotionally disturbed and all these kind of things, but not getting the help she needs. And so she meets this man and she falls in love with him and marries him. And he has an aspiration of being a stay-at-home dad because his mom was a mom and a dad. And he just really valued just that nurturing that she did and the structure she did. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to be that dad that's able to do all those things. So perfect match because Wanda was a go-getter. She liked to work, she liked to drive, she liked to tell people what to do. So she was able to do all of that and come home to her husband who was taking care of the kids and have the best of both worlds. But deep down inside, she still felt that domestic part of her, and she didn't think that he was doing things right. She still wanted to be in control of her house. And so one day when she comes home, she hears him say something about therapy, that he was concerned about the son maybe not talking and not being potty trained and not doing the things that he saw other 4-year-olds do. And she immediately took offense to it because she knew what she went through when she was 4 and how people came involved in her life and diagnosed her with different things. And she had to grow up with all these labels. And so she didn't agree with it. So he went behind her back and did those things. And so one day it was boiling. They were getting an argument about all the things she wasn't doing. And she punches him in the face, punches him in the eye, domestic dispute. The little girl who's watching, they have an 8-year-old daughter. She was watching and she went to school and the boy and her got into a fight and he wasn't listening to her, just like her mom, her dad wasn't listening to the mom. And she did the same thing. She slaps the boy across the face. Yes. And so after that, they talked to the little girl. She said, well, my mom does. That's what happens, blah, blah, blah. They called the mom in, all that kind of stuff. And then what happens is she's arrested on the spot. And now she's going to have to deal with her stuff because she's taken out the house. She has a TPO He's now going to have to raise the kids by himself with his mom supporting or whatever, and she's going to be in a group home because she can't afford to go buy another apartment or a house. So she's going to be placed in a group home. And one of the requirements for staying in that group home and getting visitation with her kids and getting out of the situation is she's going to have to do mandatory therapy. And so that's what this show is. Therapy ties.
And so in a lot of ways, this is a role reversal from the conventional.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Like stay-at-home dad.
Uh-huh.
You're usually like, it's usually a male, but at the same time, it's like even like 15, 20 years ago, this was unheard of in a sense where like a woman can't be an abuser, a woman can't, that doesn't make, you know what I mean? There's almost this like, dare I say, like sexism, I guess, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I want to do because in my practice, I see more dads actually bringing their kids to therapy than moms. I can't believe, like one day I was just, because my front office manager, he's a man, right? Yeah. And I'm like, it seems like ever since you started working here, like these dads are coming up here, these dads have stories, you know, and then you see the mom sitting in the car or the mom like, hey, you know, and they're like trying to say, I'm just checking up on the dad. Did he really bring the son to therapy? Blah, 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 blah. You're seeing these things because of the tensions and the role reversals and dads like having more of their own home businesses and maybe doing construction, you know, different things that cause them to have to stay at home. And she maybe carries the health insurance. So I was just like, it was on Father's Day. I was sitting in church and I started thinking about like all the dads that, you know, people just give them a tie or whatever like that. I'm like, these dads are like moms. Like they should have 2 days that they're celebrating, Father's Day and Mother's Day, because they're doing more than they were actually genetically made to do. I feel like dads were made, or men are thought to be the providers and be the take home. And so they're trying to be providers and they're trying to be a role that they've never done before, and that's nurturing, especially when we have this high incidence of disabilities and autism among kids, and it's happening around boys. The dads that taken on this responsibility and not acting like, oh, that's never happened to my son. My son's this one, my son's that. They're embracing this more and more each day. And I just want to do a shout out to them, because then as we start saying this, dads won't take this so personal when their sons have a disability. And if they can get on board, those behaviors in autism will change. Like they won't be as stubborn, because the dad provides a different type of foundation and discipline that the moms are not able to do. We're not disciplinarians. We're nurturers. And children who have autism need structure. They need discipline. And I have seen that the kids who have this lined up, they make much more progress than those that do not. So I just want to encourage that. With Therapy Ties, I want to encourage that. And so even in the episodes, you have the dad going to therapy. We get to see what it looks like, what therapy looks like. What does the diagnostic process for autism looks like? So I'm going to use comedy and I'm going to use real stuff in order to bring it together so people can have education. And I hope to get Autism Speaks on board and everything so that we can line this stuff up and not just make fake television, but make real reality. That these are things that people are going through in their homes and they need the support. And people watch TV, but they're not watching anything that's really about them.
So you want this to be a television show?
Yes, this was a pilot. So it's a television show. I've written out the whole first season, 8 episodes, and I already got season 2 already projected as well, because season 2 is going to dig back into a lot of flashbacks of what happened to Wanda, what happened to Malcolm as they were being raised, and it's going to just kind of intertwine, and then you're going to kind of see how therapy just ties everything together.
So then this is very personal for, like, you know, this world.
Yes.
Very much so.
Yes, I know it very well. I've been a speech therapist for 22 years. I guess I just told my age. So
no, you started when you were 10. That's how
I started when there you go. Yes, I'm like Doogie Howser for therapy, right? So
you just gave your age by saying Doogie Howser, right? Like anybody under 40 doesn't know who that is, right? So,
right. And bringing up Doogie Howser, you remember that show Life Goes On with that little boy Corky who had Down syndrome? I'm pretending like you're in my age group. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's what
the concept of that show was that this kid who has Down syndrome goes to high school with his sister, right?
Yes. And he really had Down syndrome. So one of my ultimate goals, I have a son with autism as well. So he's a 17-year-old son, high functioning autism. He loves to act. One of my goals is to employ actors who have disabilities, because they are the people who we need to use. They tell their real stories. They don't have to act. They can just be themselves, and they're going to always be themselves. They're not going to have to pretend. So we don't have to train people up to act like something they're not. We're using these real stories, these real people, these real situations in order to make it realistic, so that it's not like, it's not that, oh, they could have gotten a better actor to act like they had autism. No, let's use people who have autism, and let's use, so I'm talking to families who I think would be good candidates of some kids who would be great with it. And my son is really, he's in the forefront of my mind, because that's one of the things that he's always wanted to do, is be an actor. So he actually had a part in the pilot. So not playing somebody with autism, but he got to be the school counselor.
So there's a scene in the film where your character, you and the husband are in therapy, right?
Right.
And you're both wearing all white.
Yes.
Which is like, what was the thematic purpose of that?
So there was a segment in Mr. and Mrs. Smith where Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie were having therapy. They were wearing all black. Okay. So it was to do the contrast of that scene, but in a different way. And the all white was just about hope. Because even when people go to funerals and they wear all white, they're doing it as a celebration and the hope that we can continue. And so the whole all white.
Sorry, is that a thing that people do, that they wear all white to funerals?
Yes. And the Black community, we love wearing all white to funerals because we don't want to be in mourning. So the all white thing, I mean, I don't like to wear all white no more, because I don't want them to hug me and get makeup on my clothes. So, you just set yourself up for disaster.
So it's more of a practical thing, right? So,
but yeah, so
block and you get something on the block, it doesn't show, right? So
yeah. So it was more so that contrast from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They were both wearing all black, and just the way that scene was set up. My director of photography, like, it would be real dope to have you and Joe wear all white and to do that scene again, and just really help to bring that out as to y'all's hopefulness, not the darkness, but the hopefulness that you guys have in your marriage.
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they're lying to they're both lying to their therapist.
Yes, and we're doing the opposite. We're telling the truth.
We're telling the truth.
Yes.
That's how I took it. So where did you find the husband? Where did you find that lead for that?
So this is a funny story. I went to a new church one Sunday, and he walked up to me after church. It was a small church, and he was like, "Hi, how are you doing?" And I said, "Are you an actor?" He was like, "I've done extra work before." I said, "I think you're an actor." And so so then he ended up starting piano lessons for my kids later on that month. And then one day we were talking after piano lessons, and I said, "Hey, I'm writing this show." This is about 3 months later, and I said, "Can you read over it and all this kind of stuff?" So we started reading, because he was also a theater teacher, and he had priorly been a theater teacher. And so he's like, "Yeah." And then I said, "I'm going to start casting and blah, blah, blah." And he said, "So how's that process going?" I said, "It's fine. I'm having a little trouble finding the main character." And he's like, "Would you mind if I tried out?" And I was like, "Yeah, you can do the same. Send the audition tape or whatever." And he hands down nailed it. So it was just like, and then we have such a good, we have a good friendship as well. So it just, we had a lot of, we had 2 scenes with improv, and I think 1 scene with improv in it. And the way that we were able to gel was just amazing. And I said, "Man, you definitely, God put you in that place for me to say, you know what, you're an actor." I had never even written therapy ties. I hadn't written anything. I just spoke that into him. And the next thing you know, I felt like it manifested. So that's how I found Joe. He's the pianist at my church.
And then you have tons of extras. You have tons of child actors in the film, right? And then you mentioned the one scene with the hitting. So there's a lot going on with these child actors, and there's a lot in the scene, and you're in the school. This must have not been easy to film, one would assume.
Oh, so let me tell you about that film process. So I wrote it on Father's Day. I wrote the whole episode the week of Father's Day. Okay. So that was in June, right? The next week, I was having some imposter syndromes about a book that I had written that I couldn't sell. I felt like I had published a book in February called Adonai and I. So I published a book in February. So I went to this event called Storyteller Live or whatever. And when I went to Storyteller Live, I was talking to the guy who was doing the photography at Storyteller Live. And I was like, "Hey, can you help me out? My son wants to be a model. And I also need some help with advertising my book. And he's like, oh yeah. And he says, what else are you doing? And he said, you just seem like an actress. I said, well, I just wrote a play or a stage play. He's like, well, are you interested in filming it? I said, I don't know. I don't think I have the money for it. I don't have the expertise for it. He's like, I'll help you. And so that director photographer, we connected, and within 2 weeks, I signed a contract with him. We started filming July 17th. We wrapped it August 9th, and it was done by August 15th, the whole thing.
Okay.
So it took we filmed it in 6 sessions, and I found the people on backstage, the actors and actresses, and then like the scenes with the kids, kids from my therapy center were in it. There was one family that had 8 kids who showed up, that I got off backstage. I only need the one little girl. So her daughter actually had written that song Reality. And she sent it to Brandon, the director of photography. And I said, oh my gosh, that would be the best opening song. And so she hadn't published a song or anything. She has now. She had an album release. So her song was on it. It's just like everything has just been so lined up. And a lot of it was filmed at my therapy center. And then there was a school across the street that I used to go to therapy at. So we did, so I did some filming there. That's the classroom scene. And so really low budget. I mean, I feel like it was a low budget. You had
the locations, like you knew the locations, because that's probably the hard part for most people, is that especially the school scenes, right? Like,
yes. Right. Yes, it was a daycare. I just kind of set it up to look more like a elementary school. And, and it was my realtor, my realtor, he owns the daycare center. So we already, he's already gotten his revenue from me twice. So anyways, he's very open about it. And yeah, everything just really fell in place. I didn't have to go rent out. Only scene that I rented was the jail scene. So there was like a studio type thing that we were able to rent for an hour or 2 hours.
And then you shot in your house as well? That was your house?
Yeah, so I did the living room scene in my house, the bedroom scene in my house, the therapy, all the other stuff was in the therapy office. Tried to make that happen. It kind of looked the same, boxy, but it's okay. It worked for the pilot.
So this is obviously, like you said, but then what about, what's your experience with therapy? I'm assuming that a lot of it, there's some truth, and then there's some heightened dramatism in your film.
Yes. So my experience with therapy, I'm a speech language pathologist. So I do all of the new evaluations since I own the clinic. So everybody who calls and makes an appointment, they see me first. So I am like the frontline person. A lot of times I can't tell you your child has autism. I just can tell you your child needs expressive and receptive language help, right? Your kid's not talking. You're here because your child's not talking. So my job is to direct them gently to their next step, which is seeing a developmental pediatrician. Because if I tell you you have autism, I've now stepped out of my scope of practice. However, I know your child has autism. So I kind of wait. Some of them are wanting me to say, hey, there's some signs and symptoms. Your child has lined up all these toys right there. Your child got upset because they couldn't put their shoes on. Your kid is screaming and playing with my blinds. Instead of playing with the toys, they're sitting there playing with the blinds like this. So they're going like
signs, I guess.
Yes.
But there's but correct me if I'm wrong, but there's certain levels of autism, right? Like not everybody has the same diagnosis, right?
Right. Everybody doesn't have the same diagnosis, but around 2 and 3, they start exhibiting those same features where you might hear the kid talking in a room by themselves, but they don't talk to you. So people will come and say, well, I didn't think they had autism because they're always talking there. But what they're doing is they're imitating what they saw on TV. They're echolalic. So these kids will come in and recite a whole television show at different parts and segments, and you think they're having conversation, but you ask them what their name is, and it's like, they don't have any clue. The other thing is when children come in and they know their shapes, their letters, their colors, but they don't know that this is called a lemon.
Yeah. You just threw that out there. I can't believe it. You just it was just there. A lemon? Wow.
My prop, okay?
What else? What other props do you have?
Yeah, or they don't know how to ask for water. What does your child use to say they want water? Yeah. They point and gesture. Do they say, I want water? Mm-mm. Do they ask for anything? No. They just pull me towards it and point. So, but they can name their colors, their shapes, their letters, and they can read. They can read. The girl was telling me that her daughter read the Bible to her last night. But you ask her what she read, she doesn't know. Hyperlexic. They look at words, they look at the shapes of the letters, and they become so infatuated with it because it's a concrete thing that they now have picked up something called hyperlexia.
Yeah.
No comprehension, no expression of it, but they can read. They'll just read and read and read, and they can't have a conversation. They can't talk. They can't name things, but they can read. That's that right there. And they're 2 or 3. Yeah. That right there is a big red flag, because and that's how some of these kids go misdiagnosed, because their parents just think they're brilliant and they don't think that there's anything wrong. But they say all these different things. I said yes, but they still are wearing a diaper and they're 4 years old, but they can read. There's some disconnections, or they're not eating food. They only eat starches. They won't eat vegetables. They won't eat things that are crunchy. They don't want to play with other people. They can't stand stuff on their fingers. Just they spin around in circles.
But there's like I said, there's different levels. Like someone could be on the spectrum, but they're not autistic. Is that true as well?
So now they have eliminated the diagnosis. They used to have something called Asperger's. And they used to have something called PDD, pervasive developmental disorder. They've just grouped everything in the spectrum and now called it autism. So most people do not want their child labeled autistic.
That's what I'm trying to say. So then, because some of these kids are high functioning.
Yes.
They might not be diagnosed until later on. They're even in their adulthood, I guess, too.
Right. So you have Elon Musk. He has said that he has autism. Who else? All these geniuses that are coming. Bill Gates. Like, there's so many people who are high functioning because it's the umbrella of spectrum. Geniuses are probably autistic. I feel like I have autism. I haven't been diagnosed, but I know that I'm a genius. I'm just kidding. But our brains think and are wired a little differently when we don't perceive the world like everybody else does. And that's what it is. Perception is everything. And so sometimes our perception conflicts with how we interact with other people. And so that's pretty much what autism is. It's really a social language disorder where it impacts the way that you interact with others. They can seem as rude. They can seem narcissistic. They can seem like they just have no people skills, like people who are just...
Like you just mentioned Elon Musk, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Why would you get on TV and say the stuff you say? It's not because I don't believe he has narcissism. It's autism. And he hasn't had therapy to learn there's certain things you say, there's certain things you think. That's a thinking thought, not a verbal thought.
Yeah, no, but it's like I said, it's a different train of thought. Like you can't, it's like it's easy to judge, but then who they are, right? So
yes, that's how they are. And if you haven't been taught better, if you haven't been through therapy, because even one of my older groups is a social language group. So I have high schoolers who are coming, learning how to interact with each other, because they might like a girl and not know how to say they like a girl. Instead of saying, you're pretty, do you want to go out on a date? They might be like, you're going out on a date with me tomorrow, and it just is abrasive, but they don't know how to do that like gentle ease, like, oh, I really like your shirt today, complimenting to get there. They just like they go from A to Z. Like that's what it is. Like, I see what I want, I get it. But they don't know how to progressively do it. It's more of so socialization and not being antisocial is a trait that we take for granted as typical developing people. But people who have autism or any kind of are on the spectrum, socialization is difficult. Relationships are very difficult.
Like emotion, you're talking about emotional intelligence, right? So
yes, the social emotional intelligence, right?
You go into a room and you can kind of figure out the room in a sense, understand the where people are coming from. Mm-hmm. But if you're autistic, you don't have that ability. You're just kind of you're in a zone in a sense, like you're just.
And then it becomes very overwhelming because you're processing too much stuff. So it's called like overstimulated. So many times people who have autism, they don't like being in a room with too many people. That's too much stuff. That's too many conversations to process, too many people talking at one time. You're like this, you're just trying to keep yourself together. It's making you very nervous, making you feel anxious. You just want to get out. You want to escape and you can't do it. So when you're younger, you might just go, you might do all that because you're trying to contain yourself. Yeah. And so a therapy such as occupational therapy teaches you to help to desensitize you to some of these external environmental stimuli that are causing you to spin out of control. So all of those things are going to be wrapped up into therapy ties. I cannot wait for a producer or a distributor to pick it up because I believe that we need this information out there. We need it out now because there's so many people who are judging other parents who may not be disciplining their kids the
Yeah.
way they want to. The children are sitting in a shopping cart with an iPad, glued to it. But that's the only way the mom can get through the
Yeah,
store
yeah.
without her child having a a meltdown. I don't want to call it.
And there people judge that, right? But
People
they're just the mom's just managing.
right. So they don't go out. These moms don't go out. These moms are depressed. These dads are depressed. They can't take their children to a family event because people are talking about them. They don't want to be around their kids because the child might, it's just so much. And I just really want to increase sensitivity among this population. And my heart goes for it. Like I said, I'm a mother with a child with autism. I feel like I'm a mother of these thousands of kids I've worked with over the last 22 years. And I just really want their voice to be heard through something like this, that's on a network, that's on television for the whole world to see.
Well, congratulations on making your first film, and you're very ambitious and in terms of like wanting to get this out there and tell like there's two things going on, right? There's that
Yes.
where you just described. There's also like the adult kind of like growing up and like that, you know
Yes.
what I mean, like learning to deal with their shit, right?
Right, right. And that's Malcolm. Malcolm is going to be a high functioning person with autism
Yeah.
because, it comes a lot of times it is passed down genetically. And so his whole way of dealing with things, he has kind of just like put his hands over his ears.
Yeah.
And so he's going to start therapy as well. And then he's going to find out about this and about this is something that these are things and tactics that you can use and learn how to have conversation because he's just been avoidant. And that's why his marriage is where it is now, because there's certain topics that they just did not touch because it led to an argument or just overwhelmment. So
and the big thing is that, just to finish this off, my perspective is that it's like it's all about the diagnosis, right? Because as soon as someone gets diagnosed with anything, right, they have, then you can therapize it, you can heal it, you can kind of do whatever you need to do. But the issue is that it's like things are not, people don't get diagnosed for economically whatever it is, right? And so basically, just to finish it off, it's like a relative of mine was at a tech conference in San Francisco, and he's telling me about like the devices. Like eventually, there's going to be a device where like someone's just going to have a machine, and then they're going to be able to like scan the person, right?
Yes.
And then they're going to be able to be diagnosed with all the crap that they have, right?
Yes, yes, it's already out there. It's frequency.
Sorry, but you know what I mean? Like, because we all have crap. What I meant is that we all have crap, right?
We do. And absolutely.
And if we can get diagnosed sooner, the better, right? Like the technology, that's the pros of AI, the pros of like that.
Yes.
Or like
yes. But once you get diagnosed, you got to do something with it. And that's just kind of how, like, even in the African American community, we don't do therapy. Like that's something that's stigmatized. My mom didn't do therapy. My grandmother didn't do therapy. Like so many people didn't do therapy. So we continue that, but we want to break those chains, because imagine how many, my saying these days is heal before you have kids. Heal before you have kids.
Because easier said than done, right?
Yes. Yeah. Once you have kids and you are still working on your own healing, you're going to infect and affect your children in the generations to come. So that's what therapy is. It's healing. It's not prevention, but it's healing. It's coping, and it's allowing you to be able to connect with the world and tie yourself to other people without feeling always judged, criticized, blamed, and feeling guilty. So therapy helps you to address who you are and to accept who you are. And I believe that's, if we have more acceptance of ourselves, we'll be able to accept other people when it comes to social interactions and just the world that we live in.
Yeah. But you have to do the work too, right? So that's
gotta do the work. Yeah.
You just don't go into a room and they're like, "Oh, let's talk," and you're going to be healed. Like you.
Honesty is the best policy if you want anything to happen in your life, because we can all be pretenders because this world is full of them. But are you really getting to the root of what's going on with you? So that's what it is. It's all about just being transparent, and that's what therapy is.
All right. On that note, I wish you the best of luck with this
film,
this TV series, and I hope it gets everything that you want out of it. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.